There are so many crochet tools and accessories that advertisers are constantly trying to get us crocheters to purchase. But there is a certain satisfaction in being able to make these items at home. And not only can this be a fun and creative process, it can also save you money. And today I have 21 DIY crochet tools that you can make at home with things that you might already have hanging around at your house. Let me know what your favorite DIY crochet tools are in the comment section below. Hi, I'm Elise from EliseRoseCrochet.com, and you're going to find links for any of the things that I'm mentioning down in the description box below. But let's go ahead and jump in with the first DIY crochet tool. The first DIY tool, and the one that I think many of us have made at home in the past, are stitch markers. These really are essential tools for crocheters, and you'll likely find them in 4 different types: circular, locking, lobster clasp, and light bulb. And while stitch markers are a great tool for crocheters, they aren't things that we need to go out and purchase. We likely have everything we need at home. The first are paper clips. And I don't know about you, but in my house, I have an endless supply of paper clips, and I can't even remember the last time that I purchased any. So maybe they're multiplying on their own. I don't know what they're doing when I'm not looking, but I have so many of these, and these are great for stitch markers. One thing that's really great about them is that you can slip them on like one of the circular stitch markers, but if you continue to rotate it, it almost acts as a locking stitch marker so that it stays in place. The next DIY stitch marker are safety pins. Now, I looked all over my house for a safety pin, and I can't find one anywhere. These make great stitch markers as well because they can lock into place, and that is so great, especially because a lot of stitch markers that I have purchased fall out mid-project. I know you know how that feels. It is not fun when you are working in the round and you look and you're thinking, where did that stitch marker go? So I do really like locking stitch markers, and safety pins are great for that. The only thing to be careful with those is that they can be sharp, and also they can snag or split your stitches, so just be careful of that. Another household item that I have an endless supply of are bobby pins. I don't buy bobby pins, I don't use bobby pins, but boy do I have a lot of them. These can slide onto your stitches so easily, and because of the way that they're made, as long as they're not kind of stretched out, they will almost lock into place, which I think is perfect. There's no snagging. They have those little plastic little thingies on the end there, so it's not going to snag your project or poke you. Plus, these are really, really cheap. Another DIY stitch marker is just to use your scrap yarn. This is a fantastic way to use up that yarn that you already have and just cut little strips of it so that you can use it as a stitch marker. You just place it exactly where you would put a stitch marker and crochet over it. Or you can also, especially if you're working in the round, you can just get a longer piece of your yarn and lay it over the stitch that you want to crochet over, and then move it up front and back as you are crocheting for each round, and when you're done, you can just pull the whole thing out. Let's take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform for creative-minded people. They have thousands of amazing classes in so many different creative areas like crocheting, knitting, sewing, just to name a few. What's great is that all Skillshare classes are online, they are all ad-free, and you can learn from the comforts of your own home. And one of my favorite classes is Modern Crochet Essentials for Getting Started from one of my favorite crochet teachers, Tony Lipsy of TL Yarn Crafts. This is a fantastic class for total beginners, but it's also great for those of us who want to polish up our existing crochet skills. This class contains 14 different lessons that will help you to feel more confident with your crocheting. One of my favorites is all about blocking and aftercare. I get a lot of questions about this, and this lesson explains not only how to do it, but why it's important. And what's even better is that the first 500 people to use my link will get access to one of Skillshare's best offers, 30 days free and 40% off your first year of Skillshare membership. But make sure to check out all of the other crochet classes on Skillshare. You will find ones on amigurumi, mosaic crochet, and crochet jewelry, just to name a few. There's something for everyone. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. If you don't have a yarn swift and a ball winder, you might think that you can't wind up your yarn into neat little cakes. but all you need is a roll of toilet paper. Well, you're actually going to take all the toilet paper off and you just need the little roll inside. All you need to do is cut a little slit here at the top and feed your yarn through the center. Place your yarn end through the little slit to secure and then start winding the yarn around the little toilet paper roll. And you want to do it at a bit of an angle. And as you're winding, make sure to turn the toilet paper roll every once in a while so that it starts to look like a cake. Once you've wrapped all the yarn around it, pull it through, and now you have the perfect center pull yarn cake. I love this tip because we all have toilet paper rolls hanging around the house, and we can wind up those random skeins of yarn that maybe you've used half of the skein and it just kind of looks a little messy and a little just floppy, and this turns it into a nice, neat little cake. Wooden or ceramic yarn bowls are a luxury crochet item. These can cost a pretty penny. They're a great way to keep your yarn contained when you're working on a project and you don't want it rolling around and your cats jumping on it and then doing their little thumper feet on it. But it also keeps it nice and clean from those said pets. I do have these two gorgeous wooden yarn bowls that were a gift from a sweet friend. They keep the yarn clean, and the little notches allow you to feed the yarn through without it getting tangled. But there are so many different ways that you can create something similar with things that you likely already have hanging around your house. Here are a few ideas to get you started. The first is a colander. It looks a lot like a big yarn bowl, and you can just stick your yarn in here and feed it through one of the holes. Now, this has pretty narrow holes in it. We used to have one that had much larger slats that you could feed almost any yarn through. The only downside to this option is that once you feed the yarn through this, your project is attached to the yarn in the colander. So if you needed to take that yarn out for any reason, or you wanted to take your project somewhere, the colander would have to go with you, or you would just need to cut the yarn and join it again. So that is one of the negatives of this one, but I got another one for you. Any container that's large enough to hold your yarn could potentially be a yarn bowl. This is just a Clorox wipe box that I covered with some beautiful wrapping paper, and I made this when I tested different viral TikTok crochet hacks, and I will link to that video in the description box below. What I really like about this is that you can open and close it. You also have the little place to feed the yarn, and I know that some people were a little bit concerned about fraying. If you had super fine or really breakable yarn, that might be an issue, but for the yarn that I typically use, I'm not concerned about this causing any kind of issue. The other thing you can do is to use an oatmeal container. This is nice and big and can hold a large skein of yarn. All you'd need to do is cut a little hole in here and use that to feed the yarn through. People in the comment section have also shared that large coffee containers make great yarn bowls as well. Plus, your yarn will smell deliciously of coffee beans. A crochet tool that I just learned about is something called a yarn cozy. They're also known as yarn socks or yarn sleeves. And basically, it's just a way to keep your yarn nice and clean and compact when you are pulling from the center. I found a set on Amazon, and they're almost $20 when you can just make something like this at home easily with an old pair of pantyhose. All you need to do is cut off the toe and part of the leg to make it into like a little footless sock, and you just stick it over the yarn. The best kind of pantyhose for this are the kind that are probably a little bit stretched out. We don't want those super support pantyhose because that's gonna really condense the yarn down. But if you have some that maybe they're a little bit stretched out, these would be a great way to use those up. Another DIY crochet tool that you can make at home are ergonomic crochet hook handles. Ergonomic crochet handles are really important to me. They've allowed me to crochet more because they ease the tension when I am crocheting and holding that hook in my hand and in my wrist and even my elbow. And that helps me to be able to crochet for longer periods of time. The only downside is that they tend to cost more, and finding one that works best for you can be a costly game of trial and error. But the great news is that there are several cheap ways that you can create ergonomic crochet hooks at home, and you can customize them to fit your hand perfectly. Now, I'm all in favor of ergonomic crochet hooks and investing in them, but there are a few valid reasons why someone might not want to. The first is that it just isn't in the budget. I totally understand that. And number two, you already have a crochet hook that you love, but it's not ergonomic. If you do a Google search for DIY ergonomic crochet hook handles, you're going to find a lot of amazing ideas. And one of my favorites is using polymer clay. And if you're already a pretty crafty person, you might have polymer clay already laying around at home. And one of the biggest benefits to using polymer clay is that you can make it to fit your hand perfectly. And if you're super artsy, you can sculpt that polymer clay and make your crochet hook handles look like a piece of art. One of my favorite ways to make your crochet hook handle ergonomic is by using shelf liner. We've been using shelf liner in our home for lots of different things for many years because we have an adult son with special needs. And he needs adaptive tools to be able to help him to do everyday things. And what's great about it is that you can apply it to surfaces, but it doesn't leave a sticky residue. It really is a versatile product to have at home, whether you want to use it for DIY projects or if you have somebody in your life who has a disability of some kind. And what's great about using this for an ergonomic crochet hook handle is that if you ever want to remove it, it is just as simple as unwrapping it. All you need to do is cut the shelf liner to the width of your crochet hook handle, and I found that cutting a rectangle first works best. Then once the rectangle is cut, then taper the edges by cutting the sides to form a trapezoid or a triangle without the pointed end. Then all you have to do is roll up your hook in the shelf liner, and then I added a little bit of hot glue at the end to secure it. Yarn holders are very popular crochet gadgets that can easily be made at home. And they're also the ones that have suckered me into buying them the most. And there are several different types. One is the wooden yarn holder. These hold your yarn upright, and when they work properly, you're able to spin the yarn smoothly while you're working on a project. Another new gadget is called the Wool Genie. This new crochet gadget allows the yarn to unwind at the same rate as you knit or crochet, meaning a tangle-free, easy knitting or crochet experience. This is a really neat little gadget, but it comes at a price tag of almost $50. Now, I have not purchased a wooden yarn holder or the Yarn Genie, so I can't say whether or not they work well, but I have purchased two, and I have some opinions about them. The first is the Big Sully that I bought back in November of 2022, and I had high hopes for this one. But ultimately, I found that it was pretty bulky and completely unnecessary for what I wanted to do. I just needed a yarn holder. This has a lot of bells and whistles that I just find not necessary. And the next one is the Olicraft double revolving yarn holder. I do a lot of color work with crocheting and knitting, and I thought that this was going to be the perfect way to be able to hold multiple skeins of yarn at a time. And I found that this just didn't work for what I wanted to use it for. But I have had some people in the comment section below say that this works for other types of craft, and right now my brain is just escaping me right now, but it does work for other crafters. I just don't think it really works well for crocheters. One of my favorite ways to make a DIY yarn holder is with a vertical paper towel holder. This basically looks a lot like a yarn holder, but at a fraction of the cost. You may already have one of these lying around your house, but I bet you could pick one of these up at a thrift store for next to nothing. Another one of my favorite ideas is if you have ever lost your ruler or your measuring tape, I've got a little backup plan for you. Use your own body for fast approximate measuring. The first joint of an index finger is about 1 inch long. When a hand is spread wide, the span from the tip of the thumb to the tip of the pinky is about 9 inches. From the tip of the thumb to the tip of the index finger is around 6 inches, and that information is from the LA Times. I tested this to see what my actual measurements are, and I think that is a great way to be able to make your own DIY measuring tool. I found that the measurement from my first joint up to the top of my finger is about 1 inch. But when I spread my hand wide, it's not quite 9 inches. I have 8 inches from here to here. And the measurement from here to here is 6 inches. So now that I know those measurements, anytime that I can't find my measuring tape or a ruler, I can just use my hand. Keeping your crochet tools organized can be costly, but there are a lot of things just hanging around in your house that you can use to keep yourself nice and organized. If you have any pill bottles laying around, these make great holders for yarn needles, buttons, safety eyes for amigurumi, and stitch markers, just to name a few. Glass jars are also a great way to keep your crochet supplies organized. These are just wee yogurt jars that I made a little cute crochet top for. I have a video tutorial and a free pattern for these, which I'll leave a link for in the description box below. But I love using these, but you could use any size glass jars. Take off the label. You could use them to put your crochet hooks in or your yarn scraps. There are so many crochet tools that you can make that come from the things that you already have in your own kitchen. This idea of using bread ties comes from one of the viewers here. I cannot remember who it was, but she recommended using a bread tie, one of these little bread ties, and write down the size crochet hook that you're using for a project, especially if you're going to put your project away for a certain amount of time and there could be a potential for forgetting what the crochet hook size is. I've done that before. I love this idea because I have bread ties all over the place. Another crochet tool can be used with chopsticks. So the next time you get Chinese takeout, take those little chopsticks and put them away and don't use them. And I love to use these for stuffing amigurumi toys. They are the perfect tool for getting stuffing down into teeny tiny little parts. And one of the other things that I really like to do is to break them in half, because that jagged edge grabs the stuffing so easily and you can stick it down into any part that you want. Another thing from your kitchen that you can use for crochet are chip clips. I have lots of these, and one of the ways that you can use this is to hold two pieces of crochet together if you're going to seam them. For example, if you're seaming together granny squares, you can use a chip clip or two chip clips to hold the pieces together so that while you're seaming, they stay in place. I love this idea. If you're crocheting things like toys or pillows, you may be buying a lot of stuffing like I do, and that can get expensive. But you can find old pillows or old toys that you have around your house, or even ones in thrift stores. Cut them open and use the stuffing inside. This is such an inexpensive way to be able to use stuffing, but it's also good for the planet because we're recycling. I hope you enjoyed today's video and that you got a lot of ideas for DIY crochet tools that you can make at home. And make sure to get your 1 month free trial to Skillshare. And I would also love to know any DIY crochet tools that you make. Leave them in the comments section below. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe and happy stitching.